Welcome to Superhero Pal. I'm your host nerd, Tom Frunkin. So how you doing today? Or tonight? Whenever you're listening to this thing. Doing all right? You know, with all the talk about like Mickey Mouse and Superman and other characters from the 1920s and the 1930s going into the public domain, just had me thinking about the public domain in general and wondering, is it a good thing? Is it a good thing that Mickey Mouse is now going into the public domain and people can do whatever they want with them? I'm inclined to think that it's not really a good thing. Not really sure if it's a bad thing, but I'm not so sure it's a good thing. I mean, the main argument for things to go into the public domain is to say that, future creators won't be hampered with copyright or with legal law, with copyright laws telling them what they can and can't do from previous works. And it's going to stunt creativity. It's going to stunt growth. But, looking at somebody like Superman, I mean, he's not in the public domain yet. And how many Superman clones do we have out there? Got Homelander, Omni-Man, Sentry, Hyperion. It doesn't seem like future creators have been hampered by the fact that they can't use Superman's name or the S. And they pretty much have used everything else about him. So I don't really see the advantage of Superman going into the public domain. And also, do we really want everyone and their grandma making Superman movies and comic books? I mean, as bad as DC or Warner Brothers or Discovery or whoever the heck owns Superman right now is to the character, I think it's kind of nice that there's a curator of, Superman's legacy, or even a gatekeeper, if you prefer that term. To a degree, I'm not so sure that gatekeeping is a bad thing in itself either. Suppose on some level, you can look at the famous concert Woodstock as some sort of example of gatekeeping. Clearly, the gatekeeping was done poorly, and everybody broke into the concert and didn't pay. It wasn't supposed to be a free concert, but the gatekeepers failed, and it became a free concert. In the long run, I think it worked out for everybody, but originally the promoters were out a whole lot of money with like no hope of recouping it because they couldn't sell tickets. I think they eventually made money. I'm unsure on how clear the story is, but they eventually made money probably on merchandising and the movie rights. They did shoot a documentary at the time, and I think they made a ton of money off of that. So maybe it was good that there were no gatekeepers. But I guess for myself, I kind of like seeing this is the official XYZ. And not that this is the official XYZ because we paid money to get to put the word official next to it. But more along the lines of, we are somewhat connected to the creation of whatever XYZ is. So we care about it. As the writer Max Collins joked, but Batman wouldn't do that. Sometimes it's good that the editor says, but Batman wouldn't do that. Part of me wonders if copyright should maybe work more like a trademark. Instead of just expiring at some arbitrary date, it expires when you stop using it. So as long as Walt Disney is making Mickey Mouse cartoons and DC is still making Superman comic books, maybe they should keep them. Because a lot of times with these copyrights, the person in control of them is not the person who created them. And so in that regard, I feel like there should probably be a clause in trademarks as well as in copyright saying you get to keep these things as long as you are using them in good faith. And what I mean by using them in good faith is you're not using them merely to hold on to the copyright. You're using them because that's the product you want to create. It seems like a lot of times, as I was saying, copyrights and trademarks are being owned by, great grandnephews who never met the people who created whatever said character is. And they have no interest in, utilizing these characters beyond the fact of how big of a paycheck it can make for them. Arnold Schwarzenegger has, basically said that when he stopped being governor, fans were like, all right, it's time for King Conan. Let's do King Conan. And Arnold was like, yeah, let's do King Conan. But the people who owned the rights to Conan said, no, we're not going to do King Conan. We're not interested in King Conan. We want a Marvel superhero universe of Conan the Barbarian so it can make us huge fat checks for decades. We're not interested in giving the fans what they want. We just want our big check. So maybe you shouldn't have the copyright. As much as I'm sure Robert Howard wanted to make money off Conan and probably even more, be better, make a good living off Conan, to a degree, I'm also sure that he wanted Conan to be used. He didn't want Conan to be locked into a box for decades because, the check isn't going to be big enough. All the creators I know aren't really interested in that. And using something in bad faith reminds me of Warren Beatty, the actor Warren Beatty. He made a Dick Tracy movie years ago, and he bought the rights to Dick Tracy, to make that movie, and he held on to the rights. He still has them to this day. And it stipulated that he has to do something with those rights within a certain time period, or else the rights go back to the original owner. And a couple of years ago, it was getting close to where he was going to have to give them back. So he got his friends at Turner Classic Movies to interview him for 5-10 minutes as Dick Tracy. Not as Warren Beatty. They interviewed Dick Tracy. All so he could keep the rights. That's using the rights in bad faith, in my opinion. They should just be taken away from you at that point. Same thing with that Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie. Now, I don't believe it was Roger Corman, but the rights owners, the people who bought the rights to the Fantastic Four, it was getting close to the time where they had to, shut up or put out. They had to either give the rights back or do something with them. And they knew somebody else, a bigger fish, wanted those rights. So they had to do something quick. So they got Roger Corman to make a cheap Fantastic Four movie. No plans to ever release it. It was merely to hold on to the rights so they wouldn't expire so the big fish could pick them up and get them from Marvel. They held on to them so the big fish, I think it was, 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Fox had to pay them, not Marvel, for the rights because they made some stupid movie that was never going to see the light of day if it wasn't leaked. That's in bad faith. We shouldn't allow people to do that. I understand it takes time and effort and a lot of money to sometimes, to make movies on established properties. But, if you're just going to wave the character's face in front of a TV every 15 years and go, oh, look, see, we're using it. No, give the rights back. Even speaking for myself as a creator, do I want my great grandnephews who I'll never see make money off my creations? I mean, in a general sense, yeah, sure. Why not? I have, no reason to hate these people. But if they're not going to do anything with it, they're not going to put some skin in the game and, utilize these characters. If they're just going to leave them locked in a box because the check's not big enough, well, screw you. Put it in the public domain then. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think the public domain is always good? Or should, there should be rules of usage as opposed to rules of years? Because, if all we're going to do when something gets into the public domain is to make stupid horror movies off of it, do we need to see a horror movie of Superman where he starts killing people with his heat vision? Didn't James Gunn already make that movie with Bright? I understand the appeal and the fun. You're like, oh, look, it's Superman and he's killing people and he's smoking pot and, doing other illicit things. I can understand the fun and appeal of that kind of story, but if that's all we're doing with it, maybe it shouldn't go into the public domain. Even though I gleefully myself use characters who are in the public domain for whatever thing I want to do, I do have to step back and say, me and everybody else, Alan Moore with his League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, are all just trying to make a quick buck off somebody else's work. But I suppose it's a little bit too disingenuous to say a quick buck. When somebody like Alan Moore, and to just compare myself for a minute in this regard, myself uses a public domain character, we're using it not necessarily to make a quick buck. We're doing it because we love these characters and we want to see them used in a meaningful way. So there's a slight difference. And I think in that regard, I can compare myself to Alan Moore. If you think no, then let me know. Shut up, Tom. You can't compare yourself to Alan Moore in any way. But again, what do you think? Is the public domain always good? Is the world a better place because we got to see the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? And who knows? Maybe with my guideline of if you're not using it in good faith, then it goes to the public domain, and we still would have had the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I suppose lastly, I'll say that it even becomes an interesting question because, when Superman goes into the public domain in another 10, 15 years, there's going to be discussions about what about Superman is in the public domain. Superman couldn't fly in that first issue of Action Comics, so if you're going to use Superman as a public domain character, can you have him fly? Maybe if we lock things up a little tighter and a little more meaningful, we wouldn't have to worry about weird minutia like that. But I don't know. That's all I got. What do you think about all this? Let me know. Show me how wrong I am. Show me how right I am. I like to be told I'm right. I think I get dopamine hits when you all tell me how right I am. I do enjoy that. Anyway, thanks so much for listening and watching. And you take care of yourself and try to take care of me by liking and subscribing, okay? I'll talk to you later.